Now we will have a look at what ethos, logos and pathos really are, and how you can use this both when you present a speech and when you write. Ethos means the prolonged feelings, the trust that you create in you. So be enthusiastic. Of course you need to, it's your personality, so you don't have to become Italian because if you're Swedish or so, but try to show that you're really convinced. You are really convinced. Create a feeling of togetherness, of friendship. Look at cultural aspects. You want the best for them. You are on the same side. Here you can actually use emotional arguments. So if you have a speech, display kindness, smile, eye contact, and be also humble. Show respect for the intelligence and competence that the audience possesses, or your readers. And you need to show that you're competent. Tell them what makes you especially competent. Do not be ashamed if you're speaking. If you're writing, it's also good to show that you refer to authorities. And this shows that you will really have insight in the topic. For instance, if you would go to see a doctor, which one would you go to? The handsome doctor who can describe a disease in fantastic way, or the doctor is interested in you and shows it by listening to you, or third, the doctor who is a well-known expert and who has published a lot of research on your illness. Most people would pick alternative C, but the trust would be in Dr. B, since he shows that he's concerned about you. And this is the same thing when you're going to convince people that they can have confidence in you. So there are 7 kinds of introductions, ethos. Firstly, you have a short and entertaining story that creates an atmosphere that will point at your leading idea somehow. Secondly, a current event that the audience may have heard about on TV already. Or thirdly, an interesting or surprising information. Or a rhetorical question directed towards the auditorium. That means a question that they don't have to answer. Or a statement that is directly linked to your audience. Or the 6th, a quotation that is connected to your topic. And in Sweden it's very funny. It's just fine to start with something funny, an anecdote or a joke, but that also depends in which country you are. Then you would come to logos. This is the middle part. Here is where you will show your competence. Because logos means lasting feelings, logical arguments. This is what they will remember when you have left or when they have read your article. What was he saying? If you use statistics, it's good, since it has an aura of authority and definitiveness. But don't turn off your brain. What is it compared to? What is the background? Is it up to date? If you use it, name your sources and where you've received your data. If you refer to testimonies, refer then to authorities, eyewitnesses, preferably several. And an expert has to be an expert within his particular field. So he cannot be questionable. And good arguments are needed to prove a statement from a testimony. So it's not something taken just from the air. And thirdly, you have comparisons, because they are good. They're really good. If you have valid facts to be compared, to compare your facts with. Why may I not when he may? Then you have an example of a specific event. You have a parable, a general signification. But now be careful. Is your comparison really applicable and true? You can use a comparison to a third party that both parties accept as reliable, because then you can reach all of them. So a good comparison can require a metaphor or a parallel, which is appreciated in low context cultures. What that is, that I will describe in another film. It has to do with different business cultures, how to act. If you want to describe a size, then you can use your hands, you can use your face, and you can use your voice. And that also depends on the cultures. So if you are in a culture where people are Don't use their face so much, be careful. In high context cultures, you need to compare facts much more. You can also have inductive reasoning. It is good if you can rely on the premises, but to draw a conclusion on different assertions, statements, can be misleading. The premises might have changed and the entire reasoning falls apart. You have syllogisms, deductive reasonings. That means that you draw a conclusion from generally accepted truth. This can be a very risky way, so be very, very careful if you do this. They are effective if you have the proper premises. There are so many more, so be careful, not so that doesn't contradict one another. Because normally you say if P, then Q. If Q, then R. Therefore, if P, then R. I think the famous one is, Aristotle was a man. Men are mortal. Therefore, Aristotle is mortal. But it's not always correct. And then we finally have pathos. That's a feeling of brief duration. People will forget, even if they feel very enthusiastic when you hear them. But it requires to be honest when you're enthusiastic. You can have amplification, a metaphor, an intensification that leads to action. And if you use identification for selling a product, then you need to think about what's in it for me, for the one listening. But there are different ways of showing pathos. First, you have empathy and compassion for a vulnerable group. You are not to mislead your audience here. But for instance, if there is a catastrophe or something that has happened, then you create an inner image in the person who's listening. Or you can use a real picture to help someone. You can also use fear of catastrophes, illnesses. This is very common now when we talk about the environmental issues, that people are scared. People can also be angry with something in the society, and then you want your audience to react. You can use joy or humor, because if people laugh, a lot of endorphin are let loose in their bodies, my body, and then we can relax. And then it's easier to convince somebody. But you are not. It's your responsibility not to trick anyone. And you have hope. To finish with hope. Something better is possible. Make them feel good. Or you can use pride over tradition, success, recognition to lift up your audience. And also curiosity. Awaken the curiosity of your audience for new culture, exciting places, or to get to know new people. So all in all, this is a short summary of what we mentioned here. Ethos at the beginning, logos secondly, and pathos at the end. So good luck